Hey everybody, it's Julie Malullo. I'm a life coach here in Manhattan, and today is a very snowy day in New York. As you can see, we just had this big storm last night. What I want to talk about today is relationships, specifically attachment styles, which is just a fancy way to say what you do in relationships and how you feel comfortable in relationships. And there's 4 different styles. You can look into this a lot, you can read whole books on it, but I'm going to give you just the shortest, nitty gritty cheat sheet for what this means and how you can use this information right away to better understand yourself and the people that you're having relationships with. So the first thing to understand is this is formed super early, and there's tons and tons of research on this. It's one of the most researched things in all of psychology, with really long-term studies, really in-depth stuff. So this is not like someone's guessing. This is real research backing the stuff up. So when you have a little kid or a baby or 2, 3-year-old, we're talking really young, your attachment style is already formed based on the care that you got. So if you have a baby and you mostly ignore that baby, as sometimes we're taught, you want that baby to be strong and independent, so let them cry it out. What you're actually doing is you're creating learned helplessness because you're terrorizing this helpless infant that can't meet its own needs. You're making them feel uncertain about whether or not their needs are going to be met. They see the world as a scary place. They feel frightened. They don't feel that they can trust the world or their caregiver to meet their needs. So what do? They say, well, forget you. I don't need you anyway. You're not going to answer my cry? Whatever. And this is called the avoidant attachment style. It's people that push people away and they say, I'm independent. I'll just do it on my own. Forget you. Come and go as you please. I don't even care. So as a kid, the avoidant, when their parent leaves, unlike other kids that get really upset, they're just sort of like, okay, whatever. And the parent comes back, and instead of being like, oh, you're back, they're like, whatever. Okay, so you also get all these like repressed feelings built up. You get like anger and rage, and just, it doesn't feel good to have someone blow you off and not meet your needs, right? And you get these like terrifying feelings in there from being imagine that. Like if you were a helpless infant and you desperately need something and it's life or death, and someone is like, I'm not going to get to you for a while. How does that make you feel, even as an adult? Like if you were in a hospital and you're pressing the buzzer and no one's coming for a really long time, how are you going to feel? That's how the infant feels. And it makes them feel like they don't have control and that they're not powerful. Like their cry is not going to be answered, so they can't be effective in the world. So they kind of shut down and they push people away. So if you're an avoidant kind of person, you tend to find fault with others. You don't like to get close in relationships. You make up excuses for other things that are more important than your relationship. Maybe work comes first, or your hobbies come first, or you just think it's important to have a lot of alone time. Maybe you casually date. There are thousands of ways this can show up, but you basically push people away because you feel comfortable alone because that's what you're used to. And you don't feel comfortable trusting because look at the world you've seen. Like, how do you feel comfortable trusting a world like that hasn't been meeting your needs, right? So there's ways to work on this stuff, and you can work on this with a therapist to do it the traditional route, or we can address it through a coaching route, which is a totally different approach, of course, than therapy, and both are helpful. But that is the avoidant attachment style, and it's most of what you're going to find on online dating sites. Why is that? Because look how perfectly set up online dating sites are for this push people away personality style. They get to be in control. They can keep people at arm's length. They can take 4 days to answer your message. They can say, hey, I'm busy at work, can't meet up with you yet. That's harder to do in person. If you meet someone out at a class, it's harder to kind of push people away the way it is online. So it gives them a safe distance. Another reason is that avoidants have very turbulent relationships that typically only last 2 to 3 months and then they're over. And the avoidant person will tell themselves all kinds of justifications for this. Oh, they weren't the right person. Oh, they had this annoying habit. They just weren't good enough. They'll convince themselves of these things, but the truth is they just don't feel comfortable letting people in at a close level. And they often enjoy the initial stages because, they crave companionship and all the things that as a human, we naturally crave these things. They make us feel good. But when it gets to that point of closeness, it hits too close to home. It reminds them of being in this position of being blown off as a baby. And there can also be a feeling of not wanting to be used by people, because that often goes hand in hand. The kind of parents that let their kid cry it out often will lean on their kid for emotional support, which you're not supposed to do as a parent because that's emotionally abusive to a kid. And they'll do other things that to the kid it feels like they're being used. And they essentially are. They're kind of meeting adult needs as a child. So that's another thing that just feels, it just feels awful to these avoidants. And when they start getting close, it's like, this person is just going to use me and they're not going to be there for me and they're just going to blow me off. Forget it. So, avoidants get into these patterns of either finding really casual, superficial relationships, maybe going for someone who's married, or having the relationship be about something else. Like maybe you're comfortable in your sports league once a week, but it just has to be sports league related and it has to be very confined to just that. If this sounds like you, if you're finding fault with other people, if you tend to kind of keep people at arm's length, you're avoidant. And just understanding it and understanding yourself without judging it, just kind of getting why this is there and what it feels like, can help you a lot. So the other styles, as I described, the first one happens when you have a kid who's basically being blown off all the time and they say, well, forget you. That's avoidant. The next one is called anxious, and this is a kid who is sometimes taken care of and sometimes not. So you can imagine, again, as an adult in a hospital bed, pushing the buzzer, it's going to feel similar to a helpless infant who desperately needs something. I mean, imagine, life and death situation. You have, let's say you had a heart attack and you're in this hospital bed and you're not sure if you're having another heart attack, you need it checked out, and you're pushing the buzzer and no one's coming. Oh my God, that's scary, right? This is how an infant feels, because it is life and death to the infant if they get fed. I mean, if they get, comfort. If you don't hug a baby, they literally die. So that's why this is so terrifying to the baby, and it has such a big impact. So again, out of survival, your brain does these things to ensure that you just get through, but they're not very adaptive later on. So the anxious one sometimes gets that attention and their needs met, sometimes not. So sometimes, the parent comes rushing in and, oh my gosh, let me hug you and feed you and okay, it's going to be fine. And other times it's, I'll get to you when I feel like it. This isn't good for my schedule. And it's similar to the avoidant in that way. So what this does is, instead of just saying, oh, forget you, the anxious one is like, hello, I'm over here. Hello, how can I get your attention? How can I get you to like me more? And they put all their attention on the caregiver and they watch them. And they look for, are they available or not? What are they doing? Are they going to abandon me? Are they going to meet my needs? And that is a very anxious place to be. The avoidant is a little bit more of a depressed feeling. It's just like, oh, forget you, stay away, whatever, and kind of an angry feeling. The anxious is a little bit more of, clearly anxious. Hey, what are you doing over there? Are you going to be feeding me later? Are you going to be, maybe taking care of me? Maybe not. I hope not. And there's a lot of hurt feelings in there too, which can lead to, just kind of a big insecurity issue. And in relationships, the anxious will often look at their partner and wonder, oh my gosh, are they available or not? Do they like me or not? It seemed like it was going well, and then they did this, or they said this. Oh my gosh, are they cheating on me? And there's just all this anxiety, all of this second guessing. Small little things become big things, and they need a lot of reassurance, because their mind is just going to jump to, oh, this person is going to abandon me, and they're only going to be there sometimes, and I can't count on that. So I have to try to find some way to count on that more. So they're going to look for reassurance. They're going to look to do things to prove to themselves that that is something that they can trust. So if they have a partner that can reassure them, this is not a big deal. But if they're dating an avoidant partner, the first one I described, that's a huge problem. Because the avoidant is like, take care of yourself, leave me alone. This isn't my issue. Push away, push away. And the anxious is like, please reassure me that you're not going anywhere. And so they're basically conflicting a lot, and they're both trying to get something that the other person doesn't want to give based on their own issues from, and it's not their fault. As I said, this stuff is formed when you're an infant. Okay? So there's really, you had no part in this. You had no part in creating it, but it is your mess to clean up if you're one of these first two. So that gives you a little bit of the first two, and they call this insecurely attached, avoidant, and anxious. And the third, insecurely attached, is called disorganized. And this person is someone who, as an infant, often had really extreme, like, violence and just really instability. And it's a feeling of, of course, you want to go towards your parent because they're comforting, but you're also terrified of your parent because they're violent. So you're not sure what to do, right? And so these disorganized, it's literally because everything is all confusing and disorganized. Like, do you go towards or do you go away? And, like, how do you protect yourself? So that one hasn't been written about as much, but basically it's a mishmash of the first two. And you get all the feelings of, like, insecurity and, like, please don't abandon me. But you also have the feelings of kind of leave me alone and I can't trust you. And if I get too close, you're probably going to hurt me, all this kind of thing. And the fourth category, which is just the easiest to be and it's the healthiest, is called secure. And probably about half of people are secure. I don't remember the exact numbers from the studies, but just from, like, what I'm seeing in the world, I think they might even say it's like 60-40, 60 secure, 40 insecure, which is probably pretty accurate. But there also are a lot of insecures out there. So just to talk about how many there are in the population. But to get back to the disorganized, the thing about disorganized is, whereas I was saying that the avoidance and the anxious tend to date, even though they're so conflicting, they kind of, like, are from the same world and they're both familiar with the same horrible feelings that they feel on a daily basis. So they really attract because it's like, oh, you get me. Oh, you get me. Oh my gosh, these secures don't understand how awful this feels. You get it. So you have, like, this great connection. But then you just don't really have the skills and the tools to resolve your conflict and to deal with your emotions and to deal with the other person's emotions the way that a secure person would. So this is the big problem with this, is you're drawn to someone else who gets you, but you just have problem after problem. And so the secure people are people whose parents responded as quickly as was humanly possible. They responded calmly. They didn't blame the kid or shame them for having needs. It wasn't like, oh, what did you do? You wet your diaper again. What's wrong with you? That would form an insecure attachment. A secure attachment would be like, oh, it's no problem. This is just a problem I need to fix. So I'm going to change your diaper as soon as I possibly can. And let me just take care of it. And you need a hug? Okay, I'll give you a hug. And you feel angry. Okay, that's fine. You feel angry. They validate feelings. They have empathy. They solve problems. They respond very quickly to the child's needs as much as possible. And maybe here and there they can't get there right away. But most of the time they get there and the kid has trust in the world because their caregiver was trustworthy. Because that's how we see the world, how we see the universe is based on our experience as an infant. And that prepares us for the rest of our life. So we can change this, but it's very, very hard. So the secure people, again, when they're raised in this way where they're very, they're given the attention that they need, their needs are met, they're not shamed for having feelings or needs, they're really just respected. It's like that nurse in the hospital, that if you're an adult in a hospital bed, you push the buzzer and the nurse either comes right away or says, hey, I'm going to be there in 5 minutes, just sit tight. I know you need XYZ, I'll be right there. That's how a secure parent raises their kid, and that creates a secure child who doesn't have the helplessness and the insecurities that the kids who are left alone and left to cry it out do have. So if you want to raise strong kids, respond to their needs. And I know that goes against a lot of conventional wisdom that, oh, you'll make them strong by ignoring them. No, you make them avoidant and anxious by ignoring them. And this is studied. Google attachment styles and look at the thousands of studies that back this up. It's a lot of information. This isn't guessing. This is based on real science. So that's how secure kids are raised. How do secures act in relationships? relationships are super easy for secures because they're comfortable with closeness and they're also comfortable with independence and autonomy. And they very easily and flexibly switch between the two. They don't really take things personally because they have trust. They just trust that the other person cares about them. They trust that the other person is not going to manipulate them and hurt them and shame them and make them feel awful and trick them the way that the insecures have experienced, and that's why they expect that to happen. The secures just expect it's going to be a fun party and, it's going to be a great, close relationship. So secures are all about closeness because they're not threatened by the things that the insecures are. They haven't had that experience. They've had that nurse who's come to their bedside and taken care of, you need food? Okay, I'm here. Here's your food. You need a book? Okay, here's your book. They don't have to sit around and wait and wonder and, feel like, oh my gosh, can I trust this or not? They just, oh, look, it's here. I don't have to worry about that. That frees them up to just enjoy life and take action and do things, be who they really are. They don't have to act like they're someone else because the insecures often feel like they had to do things to get their parents' approval because their parents are being so critical and only meeting needs sometimes or never meeting needs. So there can be a feeling of you're not good enough because I'm not meeting your needs. So you need to be better, then maybe I'll meet your needs, right? Like shame on you. If you don't act better, I'm not going to help you out. Or even you're just a bad kid. You're not good enough for me to take care of you. That's how they can feel. So because of that, in reaction, in response to that, these insecure kids can feel like they have to put on this performance and put on this act, and they can't really just be themselves. They can't just say, oh man, I'm having a horrible day today, and I feel this way, I feel that way, I think this, I think that, I need this, I want that. Instead, it can be more of a, look how charming I am, look at this performance that I'm giving you. And this is all three of the insecure groups that I talked about, the avoidant, the anxious, and the disorganized. All three can have this sort of not feeling comfortable just being themselves because they weren't able to be themselves. I mean, it makes sense, right? They couldn't just be themselves and be taken care of like the secures were. They usually, when they were themselves, they would be punished for that because they had annoying needs that were showing up, and that wasn't okay. So often they kind of hide who they really are, which adds to further conflict in relationships, because how do you have a relationship with someone you don't really know who they are, and they don't really know who they are because they've been acting such a long time? So going back to the secures, the way that they act is they focus on solving problems. They accept people just as who they are. They don't blame and shame people. So if a problem happened, instead of saying, well, you're a real idiot and you screwed up, which is something that an insecure person might say, maybe not if they've worked on their communication, but it would be the inclination. Like if you grow up like that, you're probably going to blame people and you're going to have a tendency to want to shame people. Like, shame on you, you suck, you messed up. The secure person would say, I feel really upset. They use these I statements. I feel, I think. So it's not like this is objective reality that you suck. It's like, I feel upset, which is a totally different universe to live in, right? I feel upset that you didn't call me back because we didn't get to the movie on time and we missed the movie. And typically their focus is going to be on solving the problem. So they're going to focus on things like, I would like it if you called me before to let me know if you're running late so that we don't miss the movie. So there's a focus on problem solving. There's not a focus on blaming and shaming. The focus is remaining on, well, how do we get to the movie on time? And that's all that matters, and also expressing their feelings. I feel this way. I don't like this. I like this. Not out of a manipulative way. Like the insecures. Insecures often express feelings in a way to manipulate. Secures are simply, I just want to vent this out. I don't feel good about this. I feel good about this. I would like this. I would prefer that. So expressing needs. Insecures often don't express their needs. They don't feel it's okay to say, I want this. And no shocker there. Their parents barely were answering their cries when they were like desperately screaming. You think their parents going to care if they say, oh, mommy, I really would request a cracker right now. It's like, get out of my face. I don't care. I didn't even like listen to you when you were sobbing and crying. You think I care that you want a cracker? Seriously? So they get trained to not say, this is how I feel. These are my needs. The secure kids grow up and it's like their cries are answered. And, mommy, I'd like a cracker. Oh, you want a cracker? Okay, well, let me find a way to get you a cracker. And either I can get you one right now, or I can go to the store and get you one, or, you might have to wait a little while, but I'll do my very best to get you a cracker. So that is a totally different approach. It leaves you with different feelings and thoughts about yourself and the world you live in. It's basically as different as like being an alien and living on a different planet, whether you're on the secure planet or the insecure planet. And the insecure planet, as I said, includes those 3 insecure attachment styles: the avoidant that pushes people away, the anxious that says, oh, are you still there? I'm watching you, hope you're still there. And the disorganized that says, oh, I want to get close, but I don't know if you're going to punch me in the face, but I want to get close, but oh my God, I'm terrified of you. Okay, so all these make sense, and you see that you can't blame that person for being that way, because it's how anyone would react to being treated that way as a kid, versus the secure that's like, I can get close because there's nothing threatening or frightening here. So let's just be close. And then when I need a break, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to go play by myself for a while. Or you're going to say, hey, this was fun. I'm going to go play by myself for a while. No one takes offense. Everyone's cool with it. And then, oh, now I'm bored and I want to play with my friend again. Okay, hey, what are you up to? Let's play again. Do you want to play? Yeah, I want to play. So another difference you have between the secures and those 3 insecure types is the secures say no a lot. The insecures don't, because as I've described, they didn't have that permission to say no. I mean, they were barely getting their needs met as it was. So saying no to their parent was like, man, they're barely getting anything. They're not going to like make waves by saying no to this or, being too picky. The secures can say no comfortably because they know no one is going to be upset at them for doing that. The same way they can express their thoughts and feelings, express who they are and say, oh, look, this is me. I'm just doing my thing. And their parent says, oh, cool, yeah, do your thing, whatever you want to do. It's cool as long as, that behavior isn't hurting anyone, it's not dangerous. Do your thing, right? So they feel that freedom. The insecures feel like they have to kind of be an actor on a stage and they have narrow guidelines of where they have to stay. It's a very different feeling, right? And it doesn't just come out of nowhere. And it doesn't mean, ew, you're an insecure person. Ooh, get it together, work harder, because that's the perception that people are insecure because they haven't worked on themselves enough and they just have this sort of defect. And as you can see from what I'm saying, it's not the case. They've been raised, they've been trained to have certain reactions based on the universe they've been living in. And that gives them a whole different view of the world than the secure people who have had drastically different experiences that result in feeling and thinking in different ways. So as I said, it's really cool because you can switch. You can switch from any 3 of these insecure types to the secure type, which gives you more freedom and it gives you more stability and it gives you this sense of trust in the world, a sense of being able to get close to people, but also keep yourself. You don't have to lose yourself in unhealthy relationships the way that you would on Planet Insecure. On Planet Secure, you can have boundaries and you can tell people, I want this, I think this, I feel this. No, I don't want to do that. Yes, I want to do this. I wanted to do that 5 minutes ago. Now I don't. Now I want to do something else. So I'm going to do that instead. And there's no manipulation. There's just honesty. And people are not perfect. They have bad days and sometimes their behavior isn't great. But you can tell people, hey, I felt this way when you did that. I didn't like that. It made me feel this way. I prefer that you act this way because that would make me feel that way. And then that person can say, no, I don't want to do that because I feel blah, 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 blah. But then there's empathy. And then eventually there's kind of a settling of that happens when people see the full picture. You can sort of negotiate those things in a way that both people are really happy about. And no one feels used or manipulated. They just feel close and comfortable. And when they feel too close, they can, do their own thing for a bit. Whereas the avoidant personality is very threatened by closeness. So they have to keep a lot of barriers in place, and they have to give people a lot of guidelines and say, hey, if you're going to hang out with me, you need to know I'm really busy. You need to know my work comes first. You need to know that my pottery class is very important. You need to know that I work out every day. You need to know I'm a marathon runner and I run for 23 hours every weekend. There's a lot of barriers there. Or you need to know I'm not ready for a relationship, or whatever it is. Barriers are there that, again, push people away because that's where they feel safe. So whereas a secure person alternates between autonomy and closeness, it's much more flexible, free-flowing, because they're not really threatened by either one. They're not threatened by autonomy. They're not threatened by closeness. Whereas the avoidants are threatened by closeness, and the anxious are threatened by autonomy. And they say, oh my God, you don't want to hang out with me? Oh, this is horrible. Our relationship must be falling apart. You need to tell me that we're going to hang out like 24/7, because otherwise I'm not going to feel secure that you really want to hang out with me, right? And then the avoidance, like, oh my God, I only want to see you once a week for 4 hours. Otherwise I feel threatened. So it ends up being this really like unhealthy dance that they're doing on the insecure planet. And as I said, the disorganized is kind of a hybrid of those first two that I just mentioned, the anxious and the avoidant. So the disorganized often date other disorganized, because they're both doing this dance of like getting close, going away, in some ways even more than the avoidant. It's a little more severe than the avoidant. The avoidant is kind of like, yes, I want to be close only to a point. So as long as I'm in control, it's cool. The disorganized is like, I am just so terrified of getting close that I'll only get close if there's like something to tell me that I won't get too close. So they'll often go for unavailable partners too. So on Planet Insecure, what you're seeing is all three of these types are pushing people away. Even the anxious, which appears clingy, is pushing people away in that they don't really trust people, right? So not trusting people is a way to push people away and a way to keep themselves safe. And often the anxious type date unavailable people, which is just another way to push people away, okay? And they typically date, all those three insecure types, and the secures typically only date each other, which makes sense because their whole worldview is different. And it's sort of shocking to see the behavior and thoughts of, what do you mean you don't trust anyone? I mean, why wouldn't you trust people? They're just there for you, and it's just how the world works, versus why are you acting like Mr. Rogers over here? It's not such a wonderful neighborhood. Gosh, this guy just, want to like wipe that smirk off his smiley face. What's he so happy about? I don't get that. That's kind of like the way that they view each other is just, it's a disconnect, and it doesn't harmonize. You don't get that feeling of resonance, like, oh, this person gets me. Because the secures, they get the other secures. The insecures, they get the other insecures. But like I was saying, it's changeable. So if you're on Planet Insecure, you can transition to Planet Secure by learning the techniques of the communication skills and building those, right? So you learn to say, I feel this. You learn to say, I need this. You learn to say, no. How do I make a boundary? How do I protect a boundary? How do I be a strong, solid adult while also learning to trust people and having strong, solid relationships where I'm interdependent with other people, and I can freely kind of, be in this dance of closeness and then some alone time and closeness, and also listening to the other person's needs for closeness and alone time, and really easily navigating all of that. So it's not rigid boundaries. It's very flexible and free-flowing. And you feel protected because you're protecting yourself with boundaries and the actions you're doing, and you feel like a strong, powerful adult that's effective in the world. This is what it feels like to be secure. It's very different than the insecures that are sort of going by this list of rules that everything has to be this way because I need to protect myself from all this awful stuff out there that's just terrifying. The world isn't really safe, and I need to do this or I'm going to be rejected. I need to act that way or I'm going to be rejected. And if I do this, this person's just going to like manipulate me or steal from me or engulf me and steal my life away. That'll be horrible. I don't want that. So it's, as you can see, this is totally different. And I think what often happens is because the two sides don't understand each other, the secures just look at the insecures and they just assume, well, maybe they're just having a bad day. Because if I acted that way, I would probably like maybe be getting the flu or something, or just really be having, maybe they're really tired. They really can't get their head around what it feels like to be insecure. And the insecures, as I said, look at the secures and it's like, are they faking that? How can they just be so effortless and happy? How can they not be suspicious of people and, always looking for how is this person trying to hurt me? And is this safe or not? Was that compliment sincere? Or was someone trying to kind of play me somehow? This is all how insecure planet, we'll just call it, the planet of being insecure and the planet of being unsecure. That's how they think and feel. So it's a completely different way to be in the world. And as I said, it's called attachment styles, and there are 4 different ones, and it's just fascinating how it plays out. And knowing this, you can start to look at yourself and the people around you and sort of understand better how things are playing out. And if you're secure, I mean, you're lucky, right? Like, as I said, no one chooses this, so they don't really get a gold star because they didn't earn a gold star. They were just raised in a way that they get the benefits of that. Just like if you're raised in a way where you have proper nutrition, you're going to be healthier than if you were raised in a way and you had very poor nutrition and maybe you have possibly some long-term effects from that poor nutrition. This is poor emotional nutrition that luckily can be fixed the same way. Some poor nutrition can be fixed later as you improve your health. And this is something that can be fixed. But my main point is, don't let your kids cry it out. Don't ignore them. Don't shame them and say, shame on you for crying. Shame on you for crying for no reason. I mean, it's important to understand kids are always crying for a reason. The reason might not be important to you, but it's important to them. Just like if you were in a hospital bed and pushing the buzzer, you'd be pushing that buzzer for a reason. It might not be important to the nurse, but it's important to you. So, I hope this was interesting. As I said, my name is Julie Melillo. I'm a life coach in Manhattan. If you're interested in exploring your own attachment style, like if you've gone to a therapist and they've told you, hey, you're this one, or if you've read books like Attached, which is an awesome book, I really recommend it, or have even just Googled this and looked on Wikipedia and you're pretty sure, hey, I'm this one, and I want to kind of, do some work through coaching to start behaving differently and using different tools, that's what I can help you with. I'm not a psychologist or a counselor or a social worker, so I'm not going to give you advice as far as, like, I'm not going to diagnose you, and I'm not going to say you're this based on your childhood. That's all, therapy domain. They would help you manage the enormous amount of emotional pain, which is inevitably there if you're on Planet Insecure, which again, you didn't choose, it's just what you were born into. And these things are often a cycle. So like going way back in your family, everyone let their kid cry it out. And then on some level, they remember being treated that way. So it's like, well, this is just how you treat kids. You just ignore them and you neglect them and you shame them. It's just what you do. So the cycle continues, just like the secures going way back, all the way back when. It's like, oh, you treat your kids this way. You respect them and you listen to their needs and you listen to their feelings and do your best to meet their needs as quickly as possible. So then they treat their kids the same way. So as I said, through coaching, we're not doing therapy. We're not exploring the deep, painful feelings. We're looking at, in the next week, what do you want to do differently? What actions do you want to take on your journey of becoming more secure? And what can you actually do about it? How can you act at a party a little differently? If you're avoidant and you're pushing people away and maybe you're killing conversations and letting them just drop off, or if you're thinking to yourself, oh, this guy's just an idiot, I don't even want to be friends with him, and you kind of know he's not really an idiot and you're just pushing him away, but you find yourself doing these things, coaching can help you to take new actions so that at that party, maybe I feel more comfortable pushing this guy away, but I know I'm doing that because I'm avoidant. So instead, I'm going to just stay here and talk to him for an extra 5 minutes and just see what he's about. And you don't change this stuff all at once, but by taking new actions, maybe you add that guy on Facebook and then you actually become really good friends later on. because you stood there for the extra 5 minutes and normally would have run away. And that's the power that this can have. Or maybe you're the anxious attached, and you typically sit there and you're like, oh no, what is my significant other doing right now? Do they even care that I'm upset? And I'm like, maybe I should text them, and you're texting them a bunch of times. With that, coaching can help you to take the action of, wait, let me stop and focus on myself and focus on what my feelings are. And instead of texting them 20 times and adding fuel to the fire, let me find a more effective way of dealing with this. And let me maybe set up a time to talk with them and say, hey, can you meet me for coffee tomorrow? There's just some stuff on my mind I want to talk about. So that you have maybe a more effective way to bring this stuff up. Again, that's not as attacking to the other person, but it still communicates your needs and your feelings and etc. So there's a lot we can do with coaching, and as I said, disorganized is a combination of those two, the anxious and the avoidant. So that one has kind of a combination of things that we would do in coaching to help you practice getting closer to people and, feeling a little safer as you're doing that, as you practice it. So if you're interested in that, go to my website. yourdreamslifecoach.com is for individuals. I also do executive coaching. If you happen to be an executive watching this, go to nycexecutivecoach.com and you can get my rates through there. So either way, get my rates if you're interested in working on this, because there is a lot you can do, and it's proven that you can move from Planet Insecure to Planet Secure. But it takes a lot of work. And it is better if you work with a therapist at the same time, just in case this triggers a lot of those repressed feelings that have got to be in there, right? Because you have this kid that's just been horribly ignored, and that's been kind of stuck inside you all these years. So when you start to work on it, it can be scary, and you can almost not want to work on it because you can just feel like, oh, there's a lot there. I don't even want to open Pandora's box. If you feel that way, you might even want to start with therapy first, and then either get coaching at the same time or later. But the most important thing is that you feel emotionally safe, and however you need to do that is important, whether you need to work with a therapist for a while, or maybe even working with a therapist for a while, and now you're ready to really implement things, get things going, take some new action. And as I said, it's been proven that you can move from one to the other. Interestingly, you can also move from Planet Secure to Planet Insecure if you've had enough bad things happen in your adult life. So even if you grew up and you had a really secure family and it was just fantastic, but then maybe you had a really emotionally abusive boss, and you really needed the money and you had to stay, or you had some just bad relationships. If someone is unhealthy enough on Planet Insecure, they can actually take a secure person and drag them down to an insecure level. And at that point, you have to do the work to get back to Planet Secure. So the cool thing is it's all changeable. The bad thing is it's painful if you're on Planet Insecure, and that just really sucks. And, I have a lot of empathy for people that are on that planet. It's just much easier to be on Planet Secure. And it's worthwhile to get there, but as I said, it can bring a lot of stuff up, so you have to really want it and be ready to face whatever comes up, and to be at a place that's really important to you to make those changes. But I'm happy to coach you if that's a place that you're in, and if it's not, just give it some more thought, because it's probably not the right time. If it doesn't really feel good and exciting to get coaching, it's probably yeah, you might want to sit on that for a while, or get some therapy first and start there. Anyway, I hope this was interesting. I hope it gave you kind of a quick nutshell version of how this works, so you don't have to read 10 books and all these articles and do all the research that I've done. I wish there was just a cheat sheet for every topic, because it would just save me so much time. But a lot of the time there's not, and you just have to read the whole book for everything. So anyway, I'm just rambling at this point. But as I said, my name is Julie Melillo, life coach in Manhattan, yourdreamslifecoach.com, nycexecutivecoach.com, and this has been the 4 attachment styles, which are secure, which everyone wants to be, and the insecure types, there are 3, and they are avoidant, that pushes people away. They are anxious, which is anxious, and they're just whoa, what's going on with you? Either a little bit clingy. And there's disorganized, which is a blend of the two, which is like, I want to go closer, but I'm afraid to. So I hope that's been interesting, and thanks for watching, and have a great day.